Shalom, brothers and sisters. Shalom. Giving honor and praise unto the Most High, the Creator and the Maker of heaven and earth. My name is Yeshaya Yisrael of the tribe of Dan of the nation of Israel. This particular presentation, we do not intend for it to be long. But nonetheless, brothers and sisters, we do intend to have this to be brought out to the people for reason and for edification purposes. We call this one here From Jerusalem to the Hood, Part 4. For those who have been following along on Mordeh Yeshaya Torah lessons or Mordeh Yeshaya history lessons, you know that this is a series of teachings dedicated about what happened to the true house of Israel as time went on. As our people begin to even listen to the matter of Juneteenth, which will be discussed as time goes on in these matters. We want to, as the house of Israel, present our understanding from our records, from our history, from our sources, and from the citations we have concerning why we state what we state, showing how prophecy has worked within history. And brothers and sisters, we ask you all to get your pens, your pads, and your paper and to take notes. If I can be heard, and if you are in good spirits, please type in the number 4. If I can be heard, and if you are in good, the number 4. Thank you. All right. And so, without any further ado, giving honor to the creator of heaven and earth, let us pull up the PowerPoint and start in this particular matter. All right. Slideshow. We're going to start from the current slide. And what we're going to be talking about in this particular aspect. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot to delete my picture, which is a custom that I do. So people be more concentrated on the lesson than self. All right. So I wanted to stop the camera on that, pull this back up, brothers and sisters, and start from the current slide. Now, I do not profess, again, to know everything, and I am open to constructive criticism. I am open to be taught, and I am open to be shown if I stand to be corrected. So, what we're going to get into in this presentation is the matter of the Greeks and the Persians. And what happened with that matter in relation with the house of Israel. Now, as we have discussed on this series of the presentations called From Jerusalem to the Hood, you will notice that the Israelite diaspora began since the days before the Assyrians came to power within the nation of Israel. Assyria came to its zenith of a power, correct me if I'm wrong, within the 8th century BCE under Tiglath-Pileser III. You understand? He's written of in the scriptures. But Israel's been scattering since the time, say, of Ahab, and even before that with the time of Solomon. So the diaspora or the dispersion of the house of Israel, brothers and sisters, was not always bad. But it's something that we want to get into. Now, as we know, Assyria came to power and fell to Babylon. Babylon then comes to power and fall to the Medes and the Persians. And brothers and sisters, the Persians are having rule essentially from the 6th century BCE to the 4th century BCE. And what we're going to talk about is its relation with the children of Israel, its relation with the Israelites. Okay? The Greeks and the Persians. The Greeks defeated the Persians in the Battle of Issus, Issus, and Gargamella in the 4th century BCE. Now, the Battle of Gargamella was even shown in the movie Alexander that was made. Correct me if I state who the producer or director wrong, as Steven Spielberg made a film called Alexander, and in it the Battle of Gargamella is depicted. All right. The leader of the Persians was Darius III. The Greek and Persian war is prophesied in the book of Daniel, chapter 8. Now, what we're going to do, brothers and sisters, is pull up. And when I say pull up, I mean get your books and pens out. concerning what we're going to be reading in the book of Daniel, chapter 8, if we will. All right? Because we want to see what the Israelites spoke upon it in their records, their prophecy, their history, concerning their take concerning the coming of the Greeks, if you will. And how did the Israelites perceive it? How did the Israelites take it? How did the Israelites accept it? So now let us pull up our scriptures and read it, if we will. In the book of the prophet Daniel, chapter 8, if we will, brothers and sisters. And it reads on this wise, and we're going to be reading in Daniel chapter 8. We're going to start in verse 9. And out of one of them came forth a little horn, which waxed exceeding great, toward the south, and toward the east, and toward the pleasant land. And it waxed great, even to the host of heaven. And it cast down some of the hosts and of the stars to the ground, and trampled upon them. Yea, he magnified himself, even to the prince of the hosts. And by him the daily sacrifice was taken away, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down. And the host was given him against the daily sacrifice by reason of transgression. And it cast down the truth to the ground, and it practiced and prospered. Then I heard one holy one speaking, and another holy one said unto the certain one who spoke, How long shall the vision concerning the daily sacrifice and the transgression of desolation, to give both the sanctuary and the host to be trampled underfoot? And he said unto me, Until 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. And he said unto me, pardon me, I meant to go in verse 15. And it came to pass, when I, even I, Daniel, had seen the vision, and sought for the meaning, then behold, there stood before me as the appearance of a man. And I heard a man's voice between the banks of Ulai, which called and said, Gabriel, make this man to understand the vision. And he came near where I stood. And when he came, I was afraid, and fell upon my face. But he said unto me, Understand, O son of man, for at the time of the end shall be the vision. Now as he was speaking with me, I was in a deep sleep, on my face toward the ground. But he touched me and set me upright. And he said, Behold, I will make thee know what shall be in the end of the indignation. For at the time appointed shall the end be. Now, I wanted to go over that part, because when we start reading about the 2,000 and such days before the sanctuary shall be victorious, and when we go into the book of Daniel, and it speaks upon the he-goat and the ram, where we're going to read in Daniel chapter 8. The ram that had the two horns represented the Medes and the Persians, and the higher horn came up last. So now, between the Medes and the Persians, you had it to where the Persians became the stronger force. And the rough he-goat we're going to read is the horn that came up is the first king of Greece, that being Alexander. And it says that when you read it, that he was moved in collar against the ram and broke off the horns and stamped upon it. So this is talking about the same matter of where the Israelites were in the place in history. If there's any questions concerning this, please feel free to type it within the comments. And the ram which thou sawest having two horns are the kings of Media and Persia, and the rough he-goat is the king of Greece, and the great horn that is between his eyes is the first king. So Daniel lived, brothers and sisters, during the time when the Medes and the Persians were in power. He saw the fall of Babylon and the rise of the Medo-Persian Empire, if we will. Now, what he's afraid of is a time that was going to happen after his death. Daniel was not alive during the time of the Greek rule. And what we're talking about and what we're getting into, brothers and sisters, is definitely the matter and the timing of the Greeks coming into power. Again, not to be racial. This is the time when, for the lack of a better term, the Europeans come into power. So it was a great battle being what? the Battle of Gargamella. That is to say, when the Greeks defeated the Persian army. All right? The Greeks, led by Alexander and his general, Parmenio, went on to fight the Phoenician peoples. We want to bear in mind that the Israelites were among the Phoenician peoples. Now, remember earlier when we spoke about the diaspora of the Israelites? And in speaking of it, we spoke upon the matter of Israel being dispersed from the time of Ahab. Ahab, brothers and sisters, was the husband of Jezebel. Jezebel was a Zidonian woman. She was part of the Canaanite people. The Phoenician people that we read of in history was different nationalities and different tribes that made one particular mini or great, depends on how you look at it, empire. So the Phoenician people were both Hamites and Shemites, were part of the tribe of Asher and part of the tribe of Zebulun and part of the Canaanite peoples. And when you go in your own time and read the book, Hebrewisms of West Africa by Joseph Williams, you'll begin to see that in Carthage, where the Phoenician people winded up setting shop in northern Africa in a place today called Tunisia, you will begin to sit there and see where they had tombstones with Hebraic writing. That land is by where Asher and Dan were. The Phoenician people later migrated to Carthage, where their descendants had war with the Romans. Now, we're talking in this particular case about the matter with the Greeks and the Israelites. Next part, which will be part 5, we'll get into the Israelites and the Romans. And if you want more information on this, you can get the book, and I'm going to type it in, brothers and sisters, all right, from Assyria to America. It's a book that I have that you can get on Amazon for those who are interested. And it goes into this history a little bit deeper. All right. What you're seeing here is a picture that I gathered from the internet concerning the Battle of Gargamella. All right. And this is what we want to talk about in this particular case. Any questions, please feel free. The Europeans come to power. Alexander had, as First Maccabees points out, defeated many kings. Now, when you go into the Apocrypha, it gets into that particular matter. When he defeated the people of Gaza, which was in times part of the Philistine land, he had a way clearly into Egypt. We must remember when Alexander was in Egypt, he was held as a great person. When you go, brothers and sisters, into history books, you will find out that the Persians did not treat the Egyptian people whom they ruled over in Dynasty 27 as well as in Dynasty 31 nicely. So Alexander defeating, brothers and sisters, the people of the Persians made the true Egyptians happy in that particular case. All right? So now let's go on into this. The people in Samaria, some Hebrews, others not, assassinated one named Andromachus, who was the governor set up by Alexander. Alexander destroyed Samaria after that, and in place of who was there was Macedonian veterans there. This means that European settlement in the land of Israel was from the 4th century BCE. Alexander died in the year 323 BCE. So that's the 4th century BCE, brothers and sisters. And in light of that, he had already set up a Greek leader / governor, and the Israelites had assassinated that person. And due to that, he made war against the people. And then when defeating the people in Samaria, he put Greek what? Veterans there. So what we call today as gentrification is not a new concept. It was something sadly that was going on and happening in that particular case. What you're looking at on the right-hand side is a map of the lands that Alexander had conquered. 18 of them, correct me if I'm wrong. So let's go on if we will. The Greeks and the Hebrews. Alexander's defeat of the Persians caused him to be able to defeat the people who relied on the Persians, partly the Israelites. Now remember, though the Persians, as discussed, were not the nicest to the Egyptians, they were nicer to the Israelites. You understand? And in light of that, by defeating the Persians, that was a blow to the house of Israel. You understand? After Alexander died, his successors, notable to the Israelites, were the Ptolemies, or just said as Ptolemies, and the Seleucids. In 198 BCE, Antiochus III captured Jerusalem. In 168 BCE, Antiochus IV captured Jerusalem. So what we're going to ask the brothers and sisters to do in this particular case is get your pens, your pads, and your paper and take notes. And what you're seeing on the right-hand side is a record in writing of some of the achievements, though it wasn't great for everybody else, that Alexander had made. And you can find that inside of the museums. So brothers and sisters, we want to point this out for edification and for historical purposes. We ask you all to subscribe to the channel, comment, like, and share. Again, this is called From Jerusalem to the Hood, and it's a series of lessons. This is part 4 of such, where we want to sit there and explain where the Israelites were in relation with the world. To note, there were no recorded prophets among the Israelites at this time. Historians and teachers, priests and leaders, princes and governors existed. However, no king of the house of David existed in rulership at this time either. So this is, again, something we want to point out in reference purposes. All right? What you see typed there, From Assyria to America, is a book that I wrote that you can get online. Next part. Daniel chapter 7, verse 6. All right? We already read Daniel 8, verse 9 through 12. So what we are going to read is Daniel chapter 7, verse 6. And let's see what it says in this particular case. After this I beheld, and lo, another, like a leopard, which had upon the back of it 4 wings of a fowl, and the beast also had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. When you look at the map on the right side, when it said dominion was given to it, that's part of what it's talking about. From Macedonia all the way to Iran of today, and as south as Egypt and part of Sudan and part today. You understand? And so we want to cite our sources on why we state what we state. These books, be it the Bible, the Apocrypha, you can actually get it for free on the internet as well and follow it. So if we go to 1 Maccabees chapter 1, verse 4, pardon me, 1 Maccabees chapter 1, verse 1. Here is what we read to collaborate what we're talking about. And it says the following. And it happened after that Alexander, son of Philip the Macedonian, who had came from the land of Kittim, had smitten Darius, king of the Persians and Medes, that he had reigned in his stead the first over Greece. And he made, and it says, he made many wars and won many strongholds, and slew the kings of the earth, and went through to the ends of the earth, and took spoils of many nations, so much that the earth was quiet before him, whereupon he was exalted, and his heart was lifted up. So, brothers and sisters, you can actually see in history where the Israelites fit in the world timeline. Let's go on and see what it says here. He is said to have founded 70 cities. These cities were new, quote unquote, new, italic, with due to the fact of Greek constitution. there was an Alexandria in Egypt. This replaced the capital that was at Memphis in Egypt. The Susa of Persia, called Shushan in the Bible, became known as Seleucia on the Euleus. The Euleus, Eulaeus, is a river. So what we want to point out is an example of what is referred to as what? Hellenization. The people called the Greeks didn't call themselves Greeks. They called themselves the Hellenes. The Romans called them Grecos, which we get the word Greeks of today from. So, brothers and sisters, getting into this particular matter, Alexander, for the lack of a better term, was what you call a Caucasian man of today. And after he died, his successors made war among themselves, which we're going to discuss, and how it relates with the Israelites. Alexander was what, in today's term, you would call a bisexual man. He was not heterosexual. You understand? And when you read in the Apocrypha, such as wickedness being multiplied in the earth, we could begin to see what that's talking about. Next slide, please. The Greeks, namely the Ptolemies, also said as Ptolemies, and the Seleucids. After the death of Alexander, there were 4 rulers. They were Cassander, Seleucus, Ptolemy, and Antigonus. Alexander died in 323 BCE. And in the year 301 BCE, there was the War of Ipsus. Now, I want to point this out, brothers and sisters, with the highlighter. The War of Ipsus, not to be confused with the War of Isis, all right, had Antigonus removed and replaced with Lysimachus as ruler in Babylon. So, brothers and sisters, shalom, brother Thomas Miller, and shalom to everybody in the chat. If you can hear me and if you're in good spirits, please type in the number 4. If you hear me and you're in good spirits, you can hear me well, please type in the number 4. The 2 of the 4 generals after Alexander, most important to the Israelites, is Ptolemy and Seleucus. All right? Antiochus III, a Seleucid, captured Jerusalem in 198 as previously discussed. The time before that, Jerusalem had been under the hegemony or the rule of the Ptolemies. Antiochus IV captured Jerusalem in 168 BCE. The Maccabean revolt was from 168 to 142 BCE. And brothers and sisters, if you want more information on this, I wrote a book upon this. Israelite history as it relates to the world. I'm going to show these books, brothers and sisters, in that manner. All right, I'm told that the picture is a little blurry. All right, that's my fault, because what I did with that is I tried to put too much on one slide. So it's looking blurry only because there's too much on it. I should have separated it. So CP Son of Wisdom, I appreciate you telling me that, but I'm going to read everything that's on there. So thank you for letting me know about the blurry matter. But I take fault for that, for trying to put too much info or so on one particular slide. I should have divided it so it won't look as blurry. I stand. Matter of fact, let me fix that now. See if we can do this real quick. While the people giving the brother respect to be up at 10 something at night, Eastern Standard Time in this case. So let's divide this, if we will, right? And go copy. Thank you for that. Go to the new slide, if we will, in this case here, and show it that way. Go back over here. Well, let me see down here. Ptolemy the 8th. So I got that. So I could take from this part here and delete it and then expand this. Thank you for that. Because the reason why it looked like that, I take again fault in accountability, because trying to fit too much say on one slide. That's why it was like that. All right. But I want to do as clear a presentation as possible. The world is going to see this. All right. If it be the will of the Most High. And I don't want to have it look blurry while trying to support the books, and people be like, well, what's the point in the books if the slide is not right? All right. Believe me, people will sit there and say what they care to say, so you definitely want to be on point. And I appreciate the criticism constructively. Thank you for that. So I can make the correction. I'm teachable. Thank you for that. So let's go back to the slideshow, to the current slide. All right. And let me know how it looks from this point. All right. So now we see right here, okay, with the highlighter, right? The Maccabean revolt was from 168 to 142 BCE. You know, in 164 BCE and 165, the Israelites was revolting. And that's the time when you get into the time of Hanukkah or Hanukkah, when the Israelites retook the stuff that the people of the Seleucids took. Ptolemy the First, 304 to 284 BCE ruled. Ptolemy the Second, 284 to 246 BCE ruled. Ptolemy the Third, 246 to 221 BCE. Now I'm going to ask you all to remember that date, 221 BCE, because we got to talk about our friend Hannibal in the Punic Wars for those who know where we're going. Ptolemy the Fourth, 221 to 205 BCE. Ptolemy the Fifth, 205 to 180 BCE. The Rosetta Stone was dedicated to him. Now, why do I point that out? How many people here heard of the Rosetta Stone? By typing in the number 2. I'm asking, how many people heard of the Rosetta Stone? By typing in the number 2. Because the Rosetta Stone was dedicated to Ptolemy the Fifth. And on that, they was able to sit there and say, by seeing Greek and Egyptian, is how they were able to say, they were able to deduce how to read Egyptian. Maybe the translations they got from that are accurate, and maybe it's not. But in the translations that you see, Bulls and other Egyptologists, when they translate what they call the Book of the Coming Forth by Day, or quote unquote the Book of the Dead, brothers and sisters, they get that out of deciphering by reading, quote, the Rosetta Stone. A gentleman named Champollion in the 18th century AD or CE is credited for it. And then other people came up with other translations concerning that. And by having that, they then said, oh, we can learn Demotic and Hieratic and Egyptian hieroglyphs. So that's the importance, if you will, regarding the said Rosetta Stone. But that Rosetta Stone that they're talking about, which had Greek on one side and Egyptian on another, was dedicated to Ptolemy the Fifth. Ptolemy the Sixth, 180 to 145 BCE. Now, Ptolemy the Sixth becomes important because he was in rule during 146 BCE. And brothers and sisters, those who know that history, you know where we're going in that particular case. Because we already, while going over this list, mentioned Hannibal. We already mentioned Carthage. We already mentioned Zidonians. We already mentioned the Phoenicians. And do you know Hannibal's name, brothers and sisters, is sometimes said by some as Kahane, Baal? What does Kahan mean? Priest. What's Baal? Baal is one of the gods of Canaan, or Lord, if you will. So Kahane Baal, Hannibal Barca. What does the word Barca mean? Barca, written in English. It means what me and my lady saw the other day. Barak means lightning in Hebrew. So, brothers and sisters, if we begin to sit there and see how the Israelite influence came into play concerning this kind of matter, and for those who are interested in more of this kind of history, you can go online and get the book, which will be advertised later, called Egypt Talk in Writing. That book too was even shown, if we will, in the last presentation on this channel. So, brothers and sisters, Rome defeats Perseus, thus making ruler of Corinth in 168 BCE. Ptolemy the Seventh, 145 BCE. The Israelites during this time was in battle with the Seleucids. So while we going to sit there and show that the Ptolemies and the Seleucids were having problems, the Seleucids were having problems with the Israelites. You understand? So all of this history, we want to sit there and show how it connects. See, this is not to be again racial. When the European man came on the scene, things changed. So when you read about the book of Daniel and he's fainting and he was sleeping, and when you read later on about its Roman Empire and how he was sick certain days concerning it, we could begin to see what happened. When you read in Ezekiel, O house of Israel, where it said the children of Israel will eat their bread unclean in the land of their captivity, we could begin to see how that kind of thing happened. It's not far-fetched. So let us continue with this, if we will. Thank you again for letting me know that it looked blurry so I can divide it and we can go on from there. All right? In this particular case. Ptolemy the Eighth, from 170 to 116 BCE. Ptolemy the Ninth, 116 to 107 BCE. Ptolemy the 10th, 107 to 88 BCE. Ptolemy the 11th, 88 to 80 BCE. Ptolemy the 12th, 80 to 51 BCE. Rome takes control of Judea in 63 BCE. See how that becomes into power and so forth. I have brothers and sisters, and I'm going to show it, if we will, right? With the time allotted, thank you all. And I want to show what I'm reading from on the camera. So I'm going to quickly start the camera here, what you see here. This is the writings of Tacitus, the Roman historian. And let's see what he stated concerning, turning the camera off, and let's see what he stated as we pull this back up, brothers and sisters, and slideshow from current slide. In Tacitus, the Roman historian, right, he speaking upon the Israelites says this, if we will, brothers and sisters. All right? Like to get into it. How's everybody doing? Hopefully everybody is well, brothers and sisters. Hopefully everybody is in good spirits. If you can, type in the number 4. Let me know you're in good spirits. And if you can hear this particular case. All right? So, let us get into this particular matter right here, if we will, please, with the time allotted. Trying to get to exactly where it's at. My fault in that particular case. All right. And it goes on to say this. Book 5 in this particular matter, right? It's called The Character of Judea. And here is what he has to say concerning the Israelites in this manner. Early in this year, Titus Caesar had been selected by his father to complete the subjugation of Judea. It goes on to say, he found in Judea three legions, the 5th, the 10th, the 15th, and old troops of Vespasians. Goes on to say this. We're going to go from part to part to get to a particular case. Some say that the Jews were refugees from the island of Crete who settled on the nearest coast of Africa about the time when, quote, Saturn was driven from his throne by the power of, quote, unquote, Jupiter. Goes on to say, others describe them as a Syrian horde who, not having sufficient territory, took possession of part of Egypt. It goes on to say, Pompey was the first Roman to set foot and have rule over this people. Why does that become important? Because when you read in that particular case, Pompey of Rome had what you call in today's terminology beef later on with Julius Caesar. We ain't get into the Romans fully, but it shows how all of this history intertwines. And what do you think was happening with the house of Israel? We were being displaced. Gentrification, being moved from one place to another. Diaspora, if you will. Deuteronomy 28. The pestilence shall cleave unto thee, until thou be driven from the land whither thou goest in to possess it. The pestilence is the Arameans, the Philistines, the Assyrians, the Babylonians, the Medes, the Persians, the Greeks, and then next lesson, the Romans. That's the pestilence, called Deber in Hebrew, brothers and sisters. So let's get back into this. Ptolemy the 15th, from 44 to 30 BCE. After the time of Ptolemy the 15th, Egypt became a Roman province when Mark Antony lost in the Battle of Actium to Octavian. Octavian later on in history became known as Augustus. We're going to get into that history as we go along, brothers and sisters. So again, we hope and pray that everybody is well and doing well and will be better. Let's go on in this particular matter. The Ptolemy matter, not to be copied, ye sons of Israel. What do we mean by that? Ptolemy Soter, calling himself Soter in Greek meaning savior. That's not the ways of Israel. Even when you read in Nehemiah and it says that the Most High sent saviors, these people who were sent as saviors in the house of Israel, they call themselves that because our allegiance only went to the Most High. Ptolemy Philadelphus. And then later on, with the Seleucid matter, Epiphanes the Great. We were not calling ourselves that. These titles that we had as the house of Israel, it says in the book of Proverbs, let others praise you and not you yourself. You didn't have to take on a name for yourself to sit there and have that kind of prestige. You understand? Israel came with laws. The Greek culture did not. Anything was a go. You understand? So the camp of no man and down in the sisters, that's not the ways of the sons of Israel. We need our sisters. It's going to be a lot of problems without our women. I was in a congregation, and I'm not going to mention his name out of respect. And when I saw the work that was done in there, I said it was the women that did it, right? It was like, yeah. See, the way of the Ptolemies was they would use women just to get an heir, just to get somebody as a successor. Not because, as Exodus says, I love my wife. Because you know what they were into. Big time. Next slide. The Seleucids and Ptolemies were not friends. Now, what we're going to get into in this part before we close out with the time allotted is discussing the wars that happened between the Seleucid people and the Ptolemies. Remember earlier, brothers and sisters, when we went over this part here? Want to show this with the highlighter? The two of the four generals after Alexander, most important to the Israelites, is Ptolemy and Seleucus. Is who? Ptolemy and Seleucus. So now when we go here, what are we seeing, brothers and sisters? The first Seleucid War, 247 to 241, Ptolemies win. Second Seleucid War, 260 to 258 BCE, Seleucid win. Third Seleucid War, 246 to 241 BCE. The Seleucids win. Fourth Seleucid War, 219 to 217. Ptolemies win. Again, why do these dates, sorry about that, become important? 219, 217, 202. Why do these dates become important? Because remember when we went over the matter with the Phoenicians and how Alexander had defeated the Phoenicians in a place called Tyre, and already from the era of Ahab before that, you had Israelites from the tribe of Asher, Israelites from the tribe of Zebulun that was linked in business with the Zidonians that went over to the place called Carthage in history. The Carthaginian Wars was during the same time while the Medes and while the Seleucids and the Ptolemies was fighting. You had the same time frame of the Romans and the Carthaginians going against each other. Israel was involved in that. We went over what Hannibal Barca name means. Some people say Hannibal was from the tribe of Asher. Some of my teachers disagree with it. Some of my teachers did agree with it. Nonetheless, brothers and sisters, what we care to point out in this particular case is the Israelite matter and how it all relates into this. Shavua Tov Lakah, Baruch Eloheinu, my brother, Sar Yehu ben Lewi, my Shalom Ka'aki. All right, so let's look. The Fifth Seleucid War, 202 to 195 BCE. The Sixth Seleucid War, 170 to, pardon me, I meant to put 168. Sorry about that. All right, BCE. So let me sit there and change that. Sorry about that, family. All right. Then we're going to go back here to the current slide. And the timing too, when the Ptolemies and the Seleucids were fighting each other, they also had battle with the Romans. First Macedonian War, 214 to 205, nobody won. Second Macedonian War, 200 to 196 BCE, the Romans won. Seleucid War, 192 to 188 BCE, the Romans won. Third Macedonian War, 172 to 168 BCE, Rome won. Now, let's remember this date, the Third Macedonian War, right? And why does that become important in what we're talking about? 168 BCE. For those who remember, brothers and sisters, this is why we ask you to get your pens, your pads, and so forth. 168 BCE, when we remember, all right, didn't want to go too far, it's right here. In 168 BCE, Antiochus IV, the son of Antiochus V of the people of the Seleucids. So Israel is getting attacked on different sides. The Ptolemies, the Seleucids, the Romans, and so forth and so on. You understand? And so while this same year that we were just talking about, all right, in 168, the Romans won against the Greek people, while at the same token, the Greeks are beating up the Israelites. So when you read in the Apocrypha about the wars that happened, and when you read in the book of Daniel, chapter 11, about the king of the north and the king of the south, it's talking about what happened between the Ptolemies and the Seleucids and how important that was to the Israelites. So let's not think, brothers and sisters, when we read about a war, it doesn't hold weight. I'm not a prophet, but did you know before World War II, there was many of our people already claiming to be the Israelites? Did you know that before the Civil War between America and America, there were people of our people already claiming to be the Israelites? And that ties into what you're going to get into in lesson 7 and 8 about the Israelites that was in Virginia in a place called Appomattox called Israel's Hill. Hint for those who know what we're going to talk about. This history we want to present to the masses. While many of our people are preparing to do the thing called on June 19th, Juneteenth. And when many of our people talk about, quote, Black History Month, we, the Israelites, want to present history the way we understand it, line upon line, precept upon precept, with facts and citations. And again, I am open to constructive criticism. Next slide. Israelites in their migration to Egypt. Some historians state that the Israelites during this time went to Europe, but that's not accurate. Israelites were taken captive to Egypt since the days of the Greek Empire. Now, I'm not saying that there were no Israelites that were going to Europe, but the bulk of the Israelites did not go to Europe. All right? The brother Saul Yehu wrote of himself and his family, I believe my grandfather's family knew who we was. They named him Pasco. They are from Virginia. Virginia, which we're going to get into as this lesson goes on, right? Called From Assyria to the Hood. Not to jump the gun, as the saying goes. You ever heard of Gabriel Prosser? Gabriel Prosser, who died in the year 1800, when James Madison was the governor of Virginia before he became president of the United States. James Madison heard of Black people saying they were the Israelites that were being led by Gabriel Prosser. The man that became the 4th president of the United States met Black people in Virginia saying that they were the true Israelites. Get your history up, Israel. These are the kind of things that we attempt to bring out for edification purposes. So, getting back into this, it says, but when Ptolemy had taken a great many captives, both from the mountainous parts of Judea and the places about Jerusalem and Samaria, and the places near Mount Gerizim, he led them all into Egypt and settled them there. Nay, there were not a few other Jews who of their own accord went into Egypt as invited by the goodness of the soil and by the liberality of Ptolemy. Brothers and sisters, this is Ptolemy the first. So by the time you get to Ptolemy the second, and he's having Israelites in Egypt go back to Israel to get the records to make what later on became known as the Septuagint, we already know what it is. Somebody in the said quote-unquote conscious community is just trying to say that the Bible that we have, the Torah, the Tanakh, the said Old Testament, is from the Greeks. No, it's not. And how you know that is because of this, and it's not to be disrespectful, but we're going to keep it honest on the channel. Josiah, king of Judah, and before him, Jehoshaphat, and before him, Asa, king of Judah. So you had Asa, Jehoshaphat, and Josiah. All were recorded for getting rid of the homosexuals that was in the land of Judah. They are praised as being kings of Judah who made sure homosexuality was not inside of the Holy Land. Greek culture doesn't teach that. In Greek culture, their main god, Zeus, Z-E-U-S, has homosexual relations with another male, quote-unquote, god. Their leader, Alexander, and his Phaeton, those who watch the movie, you know exactly what they was into and so forth. So again, this is not to try to get sidetracked, brothers and sisters, because there may be children or elders listening, but when we read in the Apocrypha, and it goes into saying what? Wickedness was multiplied in the earth. You cannot say that the scriptures then by default came from the Greeks, because they commissioned the Israelites to have their records, the Israelites' records made in today's terminology, the Septuagint, which condemns homosexuality, by the way. All right, so now let's look. Second Maccabees points out that they of the Israelites were in Egypt. As known since the days of Solomon, Israelites on their own accord have been going to Egypt. Jeroboam did, Uriah, and the time of Jeremiah did. So let's read in between that time and see what it says in Isaiah chapter 30, if we will. Isaiah chapter 30, and we're going to read, brothers and sisters, in verse 1. And it says this: Woe to the rebellious children, says Yah, that take counsel but not of me, and that cover what they covering but not of my spirit, that they may add sin to sin, that walk to go down into Egypt, and have not asked at my mouth, to strengthen themselves in the strength of Pharaoh, and to trust in the shadow of Egypt. Me and my lady was in Egypt. Do you know what was going on during the time of Isaiah the prophet in Egypt? Is, correct me if I'm wrong, Dynasty 20, and a lot of turmoil was going on. So Egyptians having their own problems, Israelites being attacked by the Assyrians, Israel's running into Egypt for secure. So if the Israelites, though they were admonished for going into Egypt, were going into Egypt in droves, why do we think that Israelites went into Europe in droves? That did not happen. Israelites were taken later on by Titus that were already in Egypt to Italy, as we'll point out in the next presentation on this. Get this book on Amazon, Egypt Talk and Writing. Author Vincent Hutchinson. I give that author name in honor of my dad. What you're seeing right there is a book that you can get online, and there's two pictures on the bottom. On the left-hand side is the picture of my lady, and the picture of myself when we was both in Egypt, and some people familiar with the other pictures in there. All right. Egypt Talking Writing. Did the Torah come from the culture of Tameri? No, it did not, because the cultures are different. We want to point that out. The famous Alexander the Great, Alexander III, was a son of Philip, not Zeus or Dionysius of Macedon. Philip of Macedon was killed in 336 BCE. His death was said to be by Haya. One was paid to slay him. In 334 BCE, the Battle of Granicus occurred, in which Alexander defeated the Persian army. In 331 BCE, the Battle of Issus occurred, in which Alexander defeated the Persian army. In 332 BCE, Alexander fought and defeated Tyre and conquered it. In 331 BCE, the Battle of Gargamella occurred, in which Alexander won. Let's go on. The successors of Alexander were called the Diadochi, or some say Diadochi, in history. Ptolemy, Antigonus, Cassander, Lysimachus. Antigonus was defeated in 301 BCE by Seleucus. This is called the Ipsus battle. The Ptolemies had rule over where the Israelites were from 320 to 198 BCE. The Pinion, some said as Pinium, battle is what made the Seleucids have rule over where the Israelites were. The internal battles among they of the Diadochi made Rome to gain power. The Israelites during this time were led first by they who were known as the Maccabees, then later known as the Hasmoneans. So, brothers and sisters, in giving honor and praise unto the Most High, the Creator, the Maker of heaven and earth, we hope you all enjoyed this presentation, brothers and sisters. We hope you all learned from this presentation. And again, I am teachable. I am open to constructive criticism. Help me make the channel better. Brothers and sisters, if you care to support, I ask you all, if you wanted to give, say, Cash App, you can. And here is the Cash App matter. $ Frank Son 1. And if you care not to do Cash App and still support, you can go to the books, such as this one here, Egypt Talk and Writing, in which that particular matter is discussed. What you see there on the left-hand side, those words, is copied and pasted from the very book that I wrote as part of this slide. Now, what you're seeing here, just some reference, found in Hazor, the inscription says, belonging to Makbaram. This is dated to the 8th century BCE. And what you're seeing, brothers and sisters, here is ancient Hebrew writing. That's what we want to point out. Hazor was a place in ancient Israel in the tribe of Naphtali. Solomon, king of Israel, fortified it. Eventually, the city was taken over by the Assyrians. So, brothers and sisters, just wanted to point that out, say a little bit in archaeology, if we will, before we close out. And there was a lot of information, a lot of dates, a lot of names that we went over in this case. So we ask you all to watch this video, subscribe to the channel. I am open again, as pointed out, to constructive criticism, brothers and sisters. And I'm going to end with this part here, if we will, and going to show the camera, brothers and sisters, for reasonable purposes. What you see here is the book called Israelite History as it relates to the world. You can get this book also online. Israelite History as it relates to the world. A great part of it deals with the matter of the Maccabees. Brothers and sisters, this book here, From Assyria to America, Part 2. This book right here gets into a great deal of the matter of archaeology, pictures, and explaining why we say we are the Israelites of the East and not the, quote, people of Turtle Island, saying that we are indigenous to the Americas. This book here addresses that particular matter. Brothers and sisters, we want to go over this particular case. We already went over Egypt talking writing. And so we have From Assyria to America. Brothers and sisters, this book right here, you can also get online, brothers and sisters. All right? And this book here, Deuteronomy 28, 15 to 68, the extended version. You can also get online. Anybody cares to get a book personally from me, one can do so. And this here is the book Egypt Talking Writing shown live in this particular case. I can be reached at 908 587 4841. To date, nobody can prove, and I'm not saying it to be sarcastic, nobody could prove it because it is of truth, that you paid for a book and did not get it. We do not steal at Day Night Publications. That is the website for those interested. All right? You can type that in, Day Night Publications.com. And on that, you can also get the Hebrew books as well. I give acknowledgement on a human level to my history teacher. May he rest in peace, Chief Simeon. I give acknowledgement to my Hebrew teacher. May the Most High continue to bless his life, Kohen Mikael. And brothers and sisters, there's another book, controversial for many. Old Testament Israelites respond to Messianic Israel. And in this book, brothers and sisters, I gave due respect on a human level to my first main teachers, Murray Yosef and Cohen Levy. May they both rest in peace. So it doesn't take anything away from you to acknowledge the people who put you in the path of knowledge. And giving honor and praise unto Yah, the creator, the maker of heaven and earth. Again, my number to reach me, brothers and sisters, is 908 587 4841. We ask you all to subscribe to the channel, comment, like, and share. Brothers and sisters, Most High bless you all. Have an excellent week. We hope and pray. Have a good night. We hope and pray. And we hope and pray, brothers and sisters, that everybody is well and will be better. Shalom.